This is my Ford Escort that I've owned for 19 years, having purchased in 2001. When I purchased this car, it was a road car for 2 years, a daily driver, and then because my dad was doing racing, I decided to do some motorsport events in it. And after I'd done a few motorsport events in it, I decided to put a roll cage in it like what he had in his race car. So I had a full 6-point cage welded in and fitted these bucket seats, which are all on the authority card. So I've done probably about 15 or 16 years worth of classic trial regularity and track events in this vehicle, ranging from Pukekohe, Taupo, and Hampton Downs, and the car's been very, very reliable, and it's the original shell. I've never crashed it on the track ever, and so it's a totally original shell. So it's a 1600 Sport New Zealand assembled vehicle, and when I purchased it in 2001, it had the 2-litre already in it, which was apparently built by Neil Allport Motorsport, who's a famous rally driver. And the shell was fully seam welded, bare metal respray, and it had strengthening plates, all the camber and caster welded into the top plates, and basically brought up to RS modified up to RS spec or Type 9. So it's got the strengthening cross plates from the chassis rails up to the firewall and inside the front wings and other parts like that. And they fitted a Mexico front spoiler on the car, and the two brothers were engineers, and one was a car painter. So he actually told me that this was the first car in New Zealand to be painted in a pearl paint job. Unfortunately, this car was vandalized in my ownership. Unfortunately, I left it somewhere and it was completely vandalized, unfortunately, by some jealous people. So it actually had to get repainted. So it was repainted by a company that did a few cars and a few of the people that race cars on the track. And apparently I heard word of mouth that a few of Greg Murphy's cars had been done through his private hot rod collection, had been done through the car company, so the panel shop. So I thought, well, you know, they're going to do a really good job. So and they did an amazing job. So it was painted in stark white base with a crystal pearl. So it's a beautiful paint job, and it really glistens in the. But I had to have it repainted similar as the original paint job because of how it was originally one of the first pearl paint jobs in the country. So I had the car for 2 years as a daily driver. And then I decided that it was a little bit too nice to leave parked at work or take down to the shop. So I decided to get another car. So I purchased a Triumph Dolomite. Because my dad loves Dolomites, and so I had a 1850 HL, which I drove as a everyday car. And so this sort of was more left for weekend duties, and I started doing track days and race events and things, because my dad used to race as well for many, many years. So I wanted to get out there and have some fun too, so I did classic trials and regularity, and also track days and club events. And so I did a year of to start off with, and I also had done a few because my dad had a Lotus 7, original Lotus 7 Series 4 Stool Brothers car. So I did a few track days in that when I was a lot younger, and about 18, 19. So I was about 21, 22 at the time. So I decided to get the same spec roll cage, 6-point strengthening roll cage welded in, and then put the Momo Acropolis bucket seats in, And they were originally red, but they didn't quite go with the car, and they faded really badly, so I decided to get them recovered. And this is some fire retardant marine grade vinyl, which was what a lot of the hot rods and other jet boats and high class yachts. So they said, well, leather probably won't last very long and it's going to scuff up real bad, but this stuff, and I mean, these seats have been like this for at least, I don't know, 14 years, and they still look good as new. So I got an offcut of the vinyl too, and I did other bits where I made a little place where I could hold my drink bottle when I'm going around the track, and put my wallet, and I've got a little thermometer there, track timer as well. And decided I like my sound systems because I was an audio engineer, so I did my own fake floor with a Sony amp and a 10-inch subwoofer in the back, which is all properly reinforced and bolted through with 8mm bolts using a motorsport spec. And I have a fan in there for hot days, which really helps. So the engine is a Cortina 2 litre. It's a Mark III Cortina bottom end, and this engine was built, the bottom end was built by Neil Allport Motorsport round about in the late 80s, early 90s. So the bottom end was all blueprinted and lightened, balanced, night righted, works basically done to the bottom end. Standard crank and standard rods and everything, I believe. And I've never had it apart in the 19 years. The engine was detuned by the guy that originally had done it, so he'd taken the side drafts off and the cam and put it all back to standard when he sold it. So I had to then get a ported and polished head, a Group 1 cam, and source these on a Group 1 manifold, twin DRLA Dell'Orto carburetors. They are 40mm, but I actually have a set of 45 as well. So I've got plans to put the 45s on, and that should really open the engine out a little bit more. It's really built for torque and durability and reliability, because the form of motorsport that I did was regularity and time trial events, so it was more about sort of getting through the events, and also I drove the car a lot of times a long distance down to Taupo and back to compete. So I didn't want a screaming engine that was hard to drive. I wanted something that was very palatable to drive through traffic, and also to drive long distance and to get through a long event. You know, I'm talking about some events we did were 15-minute long duration, 20-minute long duration on the track, so a long time. Everything was pretty much to the spec when I got the car, so I just had to really put it back up to spec. It's got a RS alloy bell housing, and that's mounted to a sleeker W50 gearbox, which are very, very reliable, strong gearboxes. And I think it's got a short throw shifter. But the Cibbies I put on a few years ago because I just like the look of them basically, and wired everything all in with quick release Group 4 brackets I bought from England, and wired all this in, made all this, fabricated all this myself with quick release plugs, which work really well, and everything's all on 2 independent relays, switches, and 50 amp wiring, so they work really well. The front struts are all standard, and the rear diff is a Tran-X that I got in from England. These are super light performance racing wheels from Australia, which were blanks drilled, machined specially for the offset and for this vehicle. and the rear end is still on leaf springs, so all standard. The guards are completely standard and never been cut. When I got this car, I wanted a car that had original guards, because I just hated that you couldn't find a car back in those days that somebody hadn't cut, rolled, pressed, or massacred the guards. So these guards are completely and utterly, totally original, which is one thing I really like about the car. So in the boot I'm running just the standard rear setup basically. I moved the wheel earlier because I was actually bought my mama a plant from home for a present, so I moved the wheels and put the pot in the back there. And so it's got a alloy firewall, which is mandatory in motorsport, and then it's got a battery which is bolted down in the specific way that they have to be strapped down with certain thickness straps, and 8mm high tensile bolts with a cut-off switch.